Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Thought Brothers. I'm Gary Johnson. Tonight we got a packed show. We have our doctors in the house, our doctor in the house, Dr. Fredrick Clark. We've got Stan the Man, the insurance man, and the regular cast of characters. We're going to go around the horn, but I want to talk about some of the challenges we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about power, influence, masculinity, media, the future of black men in America. We're going to start off with athletes. You know, I think it was years ago. I can't remember the journalist, but it was a white journalist. And I think she said, just shut up and play, talking about LeBron James and black athletes. I think it was Megan Kelly. Now suddenly everybody's a little uncomfortable because black athletes now, some of them are understanding their value and they're starting to use their value and leverage it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about media platforms like the ones you're looking at right now. If we don't tell our story, who is going to tell it accurately and the way it should be told? So we're going to talk a little bit about black platforms. We're going to talk about health and wellness. That's why we have our doctor in the house. And we'll probably talk a little bit about money. So we got people who understand money. And we'll also talk about, in addition to health and wellness, I want to end with this Kevin Hart Netflix roast, which I thought was the worst roast I've seen in 50 years. But that's just me. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about athletes and their power. You know, there was a time back in the day, and I know I sound like an old man, get off my lawn, but there was a time back in the day where athletes really did their thing. Remember this? The summit, the summit, where you had, look at those athletes, world-class athletes who got together. I'll let Mr. Spivey talk a little bit about this because I know he was there. Is that you in the back there, Mr. Spivey? Were you in the background there? We'll talk about the summit. But the question I want to pose to the panel, I guess the first one, are black athletes finally realizing their true economic value and leveraging that value? What say you, Carlos? I'm going to start off with you.
No, no, man, they
Okay.
collecting paychecks. You know, when's the last time you heard someone take the lead with a political stance or take the lead about black ownership in America or black communities? No, I just don't think today's athlete is doing that. I think today's athlete is just making sure they feel lucky enough to have achieved a certain level of a success with an NBA, NFL, a very few amount of brothers now in the Major League Baseball, and I'm not even going to talk about soccer because that's a world sport, not necessarily an American sport. I mean, we have it here, but the NBA, I'm sorry, the NFL, NBA, are pretty much the main ones. Again, a little bit with MLB and National Hockey League was like two brothers in there, but
Okay.
no, I just think
All right.
no.
I'm gonna keep it moving tight. CJ, what say you? Have they realized their true economic value, or are they leveraging that value?
They started to. I don't know if you guys remember during the George Floyd protest, the NBA players decided that they were gonna, start to go on strike, and they scared the crap out of the media companies and things like that. But unfortunately, Barack Obama told them to not do that. He advised them to set up voting centers and to vote for Democrats, and that would solve the problem. And so that was a huge step back where they started to actually utilize their leverage, as like say they can't play those games without the players and those sponsors and those deals and all those things, those brand deals all the way up to China, or making calls to Adam Silver. And but again, Barack Obama intervened and undercut kind of the progress that they had there. So most athletes don't leverage their power because they're told not to. Their agents tell them to not fumble the bag. You don't want to alienate anybody. You want to keep it safe. You want to make your money. But it just shows you the difference between athletes now and then. When Muhammad Ali went to jail over his political beliefs, and now we have, like, as much as I love LeBron and players like that, they rarely speak out about serious issues.
Okay. Stan the Man and then Dr. Clark, and we'll save the researcher for last.
Piggyback on what CJ and Carlos said, the answer is absolutely no. I think that I do agree that it's all about a paycheck right now. And going back to what you mentioned earlier, Gary, I think it was Laura Ingraham, the host on the
Yes.
Fox host, that pretty much told LeBron, hey man, just shut up and dribble. And that was an opportunity for LeBron. And at the time, he was I would call him the GOAT at the time. He was the number one NBA player in the league. He definitely had a voice. He should have used that voice at the time. So I do believe that the players now are not utilizing their value as much as they have. Um, we'll go back to what we said. Hey, strong men create, weak children. And that's the reality of what we're facing today.
Okay. Dr. Clark.
Well, I think we're in a new atmosphere now. I believe that from the Trump administration, a lot of our athletes have been silenced because the atmosphere that we're in, they realize a lot can be taken from them. They don't have the power they think they possess. If you look at outside of sport, but look at what happened to Kanye West. I think that caused a ripple effect amongst Black people who happen to have money, realizing that the powers that be they have the ability to take from them as they will. So I think that they, cowered into a corner and say, look, while I have this, while I have my nest egg, I'm not going to act as though I have some perceived power that I really don't have. And they don't jeopardize the bag, as they say.
Okay. Mr. Spivey.
Gary, people talk about how the game has changed with the NFL and with the NBA. I can remember when the NBA was considered a non-contact sport. Nobody can say that today. And as far as the NFL, the rules have changed so much to protect players and that type of thing. But the picture that you showed, the people in that picture, I wasn't in the picture, but I vividly remember the picture. I think what has happened today is the game has changed, and how do I want to put this? The importance of things have changed. Today, you only hear people talk about the bag and the money. Back during that time and that picture you showed, most of those guys in the off season had a job. They were working at car dealerships, insurance companies, and things of that nature. And the difference between these people in this picture now and the players now, the difference is discipline and sacrifice. Those guys in that picture, they had discipline and they were willing to sacrifice. Today, these people are only considered with one thing, the paycheck. There are a few athletes that use their voice to change things. I don't know how many people on the panel are familiar with a guy by the name of Colin Hill. He used to play for Missouri. And what happened with Colin Hill was he refused to play for Missouri. He said he was no longer play for Missouri because the flag that they had a Confederate emblem on it. And within 10 days, the governor changed the flag, removed the emblem, because what happened? The coaches, the alumni, and everybody else was enraged because they knew that if others basically followed Colin Hill, that the enrollment was going to go down and many other things regarding the school. And it took them several years to recover. So the difference that I feel today with the athletes versus yesterday is discipline and sacrifice.
Okay. All right. I'm going to switch very quickly to men's health. Dr. Clark, here's a curveball question for you. What are the top 3 issues in your view affecting Black men's health?
I would really say that if we're talking about the real issues, first of all, we don't recognize that we have these issues, but obesity, chronic disease related to diabetes, and prostate cancer. I would say those are the 3 that really affect us that we can see the effects of, but we have a lot more than that. But those are probably the 3 major. If I swap out prostate cancer, I would say heart disease.
Okay. So, and these are, I mean, generally speaking, are Black men truly pursuing health, or are they chasing youth through these treatments like the injections for weight loss? There are a lot of testosterone clinics around. Are we doing the right things, chasing the right things?
It's a generational split. Those men who are, say, over 40, between the 40 and 50 age group, might be looking at, longevity, keeping up with their girlfriends, stuff like that. I think younger African Americans, particularly, are beginning to get a better picture and view, considering the social media is bringing so much information about proper diet, about exercise, about staying healthy. But I think the population 40 and older, some of them have not got the message, still don't go to doctors, still don't get, uh, uh, they don't get a good idea about how they improve their health, what longevity looks like. They're still eating wrong. They become complacent, not going to the doctor, not exercising. So there's a real split, and I think you'll see black men looking a lot different 20 years from now, make it to the 50s and 60s, as opposed to what you're seeing now. We still have the same mindset we had. Black men who are older have the same mindset they had 20, 30 years ago. That not that a lot of this changed.
Is this a result of cultural conditioning, just what we've been told growing up?
I think that we were, first of all, coming from an era where black men didn't go to doctors because they didn't trust them, number one. Number two, somewhere in our psyche, we have this idea that if you have an education, then if I tell you something from an educational perspective, and then you throw in things like conspiracy theories about big pharma and how the food industry, people get mixed messages and misinformation. So it's very hard for you to come up with a clear picture as a layperson as to what you should and should not be doing. Um, and even we in our black health professions, we don't have a messaging that's going out to our black people. Say, look, this is credible information. This is discernment. This is where the information that you should be seeking should be coming from. That's not getting out
Okay.
there.
Let me let the panel weigh in on this. I'm going to start from our generational perspective, since you mentioned that. CJ, any comments or thoughts about what you've heard so far?
I mean, not really. Like I said, I feel like the biggest boundary really in the healthcare system is just the cost. I feel like just a lot of young people, that's just my observation, it's like can't afford to go to the doctor. So, they try to, do a lot of preventative stuff, as you mentioned, like I said, try to stay as healthy as possible to not end up needing to go to the doctor and try to stay ahead of it because of the disaster that our healthcare system is.
Okay. Stan the man.
Being on the board of one of the major hospitals here in the area, I can tell you that we focus on these things all the time. And I will add to what Dr. Clark mentioned. Alcoholism is a big one, and drug abuse is a big one, at least in this particular area. We find ourselves dealing with that quite often. And I agree with CJ, cost is a major concern. This particular hospital that I'm on the board on, we focus a lot on, trying to provide what we call whole person care, which is not just about the money. So 90% of the patients that we deal with are without money. So, they have that platform and that open space that they can come in and receive some type of treatment. But a lot of the things that we deal with are things that what we consider self-preventative. So if we stop harming ourselves, overall, we would be in much better health. Going back to what you mentioned, are we doing things out of what we call spite, or are we doing them just out of general curiosity? The reality is, we're doing a lot of things to look. We're doing a lot of things to look young, to appear young. You mentioned the injections, the Ozempic, whatever you want to call it. It's a big deal. However, when you speak to physicians, they find that this is a major issue. And Dr. Clark mentioned it, 20, 30 years from now, people that are on that stuff are having some real difficulties when it comes down to surgery because there's some certain things that occur within your body as a result of those injections.
Okay. Carlos?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Clark. Identifying that we have an issue. Most people don't identify that, and they do it out of need. When they start to feel the pain, they start to feel something's wrong, and by that time, you're just hoping you catch it in time. So I just think that more of us just have to have those annual checkups. And most of us who have experienced some major issues just haven't had regular checkups. So I think we have to promote identifying what's going on with us on a consistent basis.
Okay. Mr. Spivey, what say you?
I agree with Dr. Clark, but I agree with CJ quite a bit because a lot of people today, if they have not had jobs that provided health care and provided insurance, a lot of people cannot afford to go to the doctor. I was preparing for tonight's show. I was in my office and my wife came in and said, I want to show you something. She had fusion surgery about 4 or 5 months ago. And she showed me the hospital bill. The bill for her surgery was $118,000, and her cost was $65. A lot of people do not have that kind of insurance. And so when people want to go and get checkups, a lot of them cannot afford to get checkups. I mean, I was talking to my doctor the other day, and I asked him about his dog, and he laughed and said his dog had a problem. He said, and I'm a pulmonary doctor. He said, but maybe I should be a veterinarian. He said, I took the dog to the vet. The vet bill was $3,800. He said, I don't get $3,800 in one walk.
Wow.
So medical care is just outrageous. But on the same hand, a lot of people, when they reach 50, they want to be cognizant of their health because they want to get to 60. And when they hit 60, they want to get to 70. So a lot of people, in my age group, they are very cognizant of their health.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I said, look, I'm in the fourth quarter and I'm trying to extend the game into overtime.
Yeah.
That's why you see my ass cycling on that trail and eating beets and, drinking watermelon juice and all that other stuff. So it's, no, those are serious issues, particularly the costs. I want to ask Dr. Clark and the rest of you all about the role that cannabis plays in our wellness. What do you know about cannabis, Dr. Clark?
I have two views on cannabis. I know it's very relaxing for some people, but there are in the body what we call cannabinoid receptors in the central and peripheral nervous systems. And cannabinoid receptors mean that they respond to cannabis or cannabinoid substances. There is a natural cannabinoid in the body called, or endocannabinoid in the body called anandamide that the nervous system produces, and it causes a regulatory effect throughout the body. And as we get older, that anandamide production decreases significantly. Interestingly enough, if you replace anandamide with a cannabinoid derivative, say from cannabis, from marijuana or THC, it will have the same anandamide cannabinoid response. But the problem is that if you put in a therapeutic dosage, it might do something regulatory. But the way that it's utilized is that it's used in what we call substance abuse levels. You may need only one puff or one brownie with a little pinch off of it, but what we're doing, we're eating a whole brownie or we're smoking a whole, as we say, joint or blunt or spliff or whatever we're doing, whatever the case may be, we're engaging in a far greater amount of cannabis in ingestion than our body really would use if it was therapeutic.
Okay. All right. Any reaction from the panel, CJ?
I mean, nothing specific. I mean, he's on point. Like I said, the endocannabinoid system is already in everyone's bodies, and it's a very natural compound. And for a lot of people are finding out that it is a lot safer than like alcohol. Alcohol sales have been plummeting recently because of the legal cannabis market, specifically THC seltzers and drinks. As Dr. Clark was saying, it's not typically the cannabis itself that is harmful, but usually the ingestion method and like the amount. So people smoking cannabis, that is the most popular method. That's the least healthy method to get your cannabis. You can eat it, you can do topicals, you can do, there's all types of much safer. I like dry herb vaporizers where you just heat up just enough of the therapeutic compounds in the flower instead of combusting it and things like that. So there's a lot of different avenues that are a lot healthier. And with science and the Trump administration recently made it Schedule 3, which is a little bit of progress, which helps in terms of studies and in terms of just some slight progress in terms of making it more legal. So it has had a great role. And even in sports medicine, if we look back at the days of someone like Ricky Williams, who was vilified for cannabis, but he ended up extending his career because of it. You know, he famously went to like Australia and was just like, you know, a stoner. If you guys remember that whole stint in Ricky Williams' career, but he ended up really healing up his body and had a second stint with the Dolphins. He came back. It was actually quite effective and things like that. But a lot of athletes have opened up about sports medicine. Kevin Durant has recently really opened up about his usage of cannabis and how the NBA has lightened up on their cannabis regulations and rules, and they allow the players to really heal their bodies in the off season without opioids and without leaning on other things that are more harmful like alcohol for recreational activities.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Hey, I'm with Dr. Clark. I think they, it could be legitimate if it's used correctly, but I just think that people, the high majority of people just don't use it correctly and just overdo it. So I think that's where that's what makes it sort of illegitimate, right? I think that nobody's taking a pinch, nobody's taking one puff, and I think people are just trying to get high. I mean, I think, and there is pain. There's gonna be pain whether you play a sport or if you're just aging, right? You never played a sport. You may have back problems, knee problems, feet problems, just as you get older. So I think when you think about legitimate medicines, especially if you get into an older age group, I think most people are thinking about medical, prescription drugs or not opioids now, but just other medicines first before they think of cannabis. I mean, I think cannabis is not going to go anywhere because the way people want to use it. I just don't think it's intended. It's intended for wellness, but I don't think it's being used that way, as Dr. Clark said.
Okay.
I mean,
Anybody else?
if I might say, I forgot to mention that cannabis does have the ability in a lot of instances to relieve pain too. So there's still not standardization of how much you would need to do have a certain effect. I know that some of the CBD oils and whatnot, which are cannabis but not THC, that you might use to smoke or get high, but it has been found to relieve pain in some instances too.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases of that. I used to work at a medical marijuana dispensary, and I can tell you firsthand that a lot of the patients responded a lot better to the cannabis medicine than those prescription medicines that you were talking about. Like you said, a lot of those are opioids. A lot of those have very dangerous side effects that the patients would complain about. And then over time, finding them the right methods. Like you said, I didn't get those old ladies joints to go fire up like Snoop Dogg. I got them, the right type of medicine and the right dosage. And if you get people the right type of plant medicine, it could be life changing in effect to managing their pain and to their quality of life and things like that, where they're not a slave to those pharmaceutical medicines that not only are harmful to their liver and other side effects, but also costly, expensive in terms of, we just talked about the medical, system that we have here.
Okay. Mr. Spivey, anything before we move on? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I believe that the drug has some beneficial uses. I can remember when people were trying to decide whether it was true or not that the marijuana was good for people with glaucoma and those type of things. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like anything else. People are going to abuse whatever. And I remember when before my third back surgery, I was talking to my surgeon one day, and it was before the surgery, I was having some problems. And I asked him what was his feeling about marijuana. And he said, if you want a prescription, I will get it to you for edibles, but I will never give anyone a prescription to smoke marijuana because it is going to damage your lungs. And in the long run, you're going to have problems with emphysema and other problems.
Okay. All right. All of us men. Next chapter, next question. Are we raising soft men Are young men softer today than they were 40 years ago? Stan.
Wow. That definitely is a curveball question. I would have to give it a 50-50. I think that the lack of awareness is causing us to be less intentional about what we're doing. Not necessarily soft, but less directional. I see a lot of young men that are 100% without direction, which is the reason why we do a lot of the things that we do from a local level to try to help these young men get on a path that is going to yield some positive results. So I don't necessarily believe that it's either strong or weak. I think it's a lack of direction. I think the lack of direction comes from a lack of awareness. And I think a lot of that is within the household, is within the community, it's within the school system. We're dealing with a global issue, especially when it comes down to the effects of our young people.
Okay. Mr. Spivey, soft men or not? What say you?
I've had this discussion many times with my wife, and we differ on this. I believe men are softer today than they were 40 years ago. It's just my personal belief. I'll take it back. One thing we talked about earlier, we were talking about Black athletes. You showed a picture of those guys in that around the table. If you remember Muhammad Ali, you remember Tommy Smith, you remember John Carlos. I can go to Dr. Martin Luther King, John Lewis. All of those men were involved in the civil rights movement. They were in their 20s. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't realize that. They were in their 20s. You're not going to get any 20-year-old men today to speak up and come together like that. I mean, people may say I'm cynical, but I'm at a point to say, how much money do you need? I mean, we all know that they were giving Michael Jordan a hard time because he was not taking a political stance. And he came out with some coy statement that Republicans buy shoes too. Magic Johnson, they're billionaires. LeBron James, billionaire. Michael Jordan, billionaire. So, I say they're making men softer than they did back then.
Okay. Carlos, you work with young men.
Well, I'll give you a couple different perspectives. I'll say, yes, I think young men are softer, but it's not everyone, right? I don't know if it's a 50-50. I don't know if it's a 60-40 or a 70-30, right? There are some young men that will go out there and do what they need to do, to study, to play sports, to get a hands-on job. They'll do whatever they need to do. But it's just a much smaller percentage than 40 years ago. 40 years ago, everything that we did in the 1980s as a teenager was tougher. Everything was more hands-on. I couldn't push a button on a device and get information. I actually had to walk a mile to the library. I had to actually open up some books. I had to actually do research. If I wanted a paycheck, I couldn't go on get a job online, sitting on my couch and have my own hours. I had to actually get on a bus, ride to the mall, physically work with people, physically do things. So from a work perspective, today's youth, again, a majority, not all. There are some outstanding ones, but majority of them are softer because they don't have as much blue collar or hands-on experience with a lot of different things. From a community perspective, wow, if you think about that, I think that today's youth is so much further disconnected from the civil rights movement of the 60s, right? I'm a little kid in the back seat of my father's taxi cab with my mother and father in the car, in the cab or whatever, going down the road because he was a cab driver before Uber and all that good stuff, right? And I'm like, hey, what are these buildings burned out on 14th Street in DC? Why are they burned out? Oh, that happened during the riots a few years ago when Dr. King got killed. Oh, really? And then it made me more curious about Dr. King because I'm looking at this through, the eyes of a 5-year-old or 4-year-old, in the back. I'm looking at this like, so it made me more curious, and it made me want to dig in more. But I think that was, we're so far disconnected. I mean, you got to remember today's ancient history to a kid or historical purposes is 9/11, right? We're talking about 21st century, us versus the world versus not civil rights in America, and thinking about a community, and thinking about more than just ourselves. So I think that, again, the majority is, not as tough as we used to be back then.
Dr. Clark.
I think that's a very unfair question
Okay.
about soft versus softer. We're dealing with a whole nother era. I believe that if we go back and say Gary and I were children, we were coming out of the civil rights era. We were coming out of parents who were raised in the South. We were coming out of a group of people who come out of the Bible Belt and believe that sparing the rod spoils the child. Then we go to another era where children are given their rights, and you can't spank a child, you can't discipline a child. So all of a sudden, and then when you ask the question, are you talking about only black children? Are you talking about children in general? If you look at a global perspective, you see children being raised in a way that they're not raised in the United States. The United States is a quote unquote free society. It has allowed children the liberty to speak their mind and do what they want to do, say they want to do, to be disrespectful to adults if they choose to be. So we have our children become adults a lot quicker than we used to become adults. We weren't allowed to become adults. So I don't think that we're necessarily softer. I think we have less guidance because we have a society that's a liberal society that doesn't that doesn't really police children the way that we were policed. And with that being in mind, we don't have an ability to keep a hold on them and to guide them as long as we had guidance. We had guidance up through 16, 17, 18, 20 years old. Our children are put out in the street at 14 years old. And you're telling them, the young girls and the young boys, hey, you're on your own practically. So I don't necessarily say they're softer. I think they're probably more misguided because we don't have that mentorship and guidance that we were given. And I think, comparatively speaking, if you have a society in which you say that the children are liberated, the parents don't have the ability to have control of the children as they used to, then you look at them when they become in their 20s, you're looking at somebody who's been misguided since they were a teenager. Are they softer, or they're just less guidance and mentorship in their lives?
Okay. Good question. Good. CJ, your response?
I don't know about softer, but I think, like was mentioned before, that's a new era of the new age of technology and things like that have made a big difference and things like that. Like an example for my generation, there's a generation under me. I would like to go to the basketball court physically and play with people. And then there's a generation under me to say, oh, why do that when I could just play 2K with my friends and I could just be online and sit? And it's like, well, then when they get terrorized on the real court, it's like, hey, that's just a generational thing. And it's the same with a lot of technology. A lot of kids these days haven't had to be as hands-on because they have apps and things and AI making them stupid and things that are crutches where they don't have to work quite as hard as they did back in the day and don't have to be quite as hands-on in terms of problem solving as, you all had to, and even my generation, a little had to back in the day as technology continues to progress and they try to, I guess, continue to lobotomize the population with AI.
Wow. Okay, no, that's a good point, CJ. I never thought about the technology, and they don't want to go out and play. They rather sit there on the sofa and game it.
Yeah, it's like, why buy groceries when somebody will bring it right to you? Why,
And
why go
Gary,
do this?
and CJ, I wanted to say that you made an excellent point, CJ, because that's why it's so important, with some of the things I'm doing with the nonprofit, is to make sure kids are actually physically getting out and playing, not just for fun, but for health purposes. Okay, also to learn teamwork skills. Your coach is your first boss. Your teammates are your first coworkers, and without some of these hands-on skills today, pretty much on the high school level is the only place you're going to get it. Junior highs aren't funded, and then if you don't play on the high school level, then you're pretty much on your couch. So I understand, but it's a great point with the technology, CJ.
Okay.
And Carlos, let me just add one thing, man. Thank you for all that you do for these young kids out there in the neighborhood, man. This coming Friday, 2 days from today, man, we're taking a group of 47 youth deep sea fishing.
All
We
right.
had a session with them. We had a session with them last Saturday, educational session for the group in Ormond Beach. We have another session for a group here in Titusville, Melbourne, Florida, and then we take them deep sea fishing. Now, here's the reality. The reality is when we first started this thing 20 years ago, it was a struggle getting kids to want to go out. Now, with the onset of people becoming part of the program and parents wanting to be a part of the program, it's caused the youth to be a little bit more energetic. In fact, 2 years ago, we had 60% of the pupils female who were on the boat, which is extremely rare. So I would say, piggybacking on, whether we're stronger or whether we're weaker, I think it's just a matter of interest. And if we can get these kids involved in college, you hit it right on the head, getting them out, taking them away from the computer. One thing about physical activity is that there's nobody there to help you. There's no guide. You got to do this thing on your own. You got to pull yourself up from your own bootstraps. And that's the main thing about the program that we have. And it's called Academic Anglers. And we teach these kids the reality of, hey, we're going to give you, if we give you a fish, you're going to eat for a meal. But if we teach you how to fish, you're going to eat for a lifetime. And if we can teach 50 kids every quarter how to do that, that's 200 kids that will be self-sufficient. That 200 is going to, become 800 before you know it, and their kids and their kids' kids. Before you know it, we'll have a generation and we'll have a race of people that will understand the importance of getting out there, getting their hands dirty, and making sure that they have food on the table.
Great
All
work,
right.
Stan. Thank you.
All right. Our final topic before you all can tee off on anything you want, something that's been kind of bothering me, and that is the roast of Kevin Hart on Netflix. Don't know if you all saw it, but I want to talk about it. I wrote a commentary on blackmeninamerica.com about it. And, my take might be generational, may very well be generational, but I thought it was the worst roast I've seen in 50 years. And I didn't think there was anything funny about some of the jokes, but to put it in context, Kevin Hart was an executive producer of the show. And, Kevin said he was on the Breakfast Club. And he said, quote, yeah, the George Floyd joke, it wasn't a tasteful joke to our culture, to our audience, but our audience that's watching the roast, if you're watching the roast, you get why they're doing it. You get why the racial humor is on the table. I wasn't shocked. That's just what they do. Now, the joke was by Tony Hinchcliffe, who said, Kevin, quote, the black community is so proud of you right now. Right now, George Floyd is looking up at all of us, laughing so hard he can't breathe. Ha, ha, ha. I mean, that's maybe I'm the old man in the room. And, when asked if he thought the joke went too far, again, Hart said, I didn't expect less. I didn't expect more. Tony's arguably had the best set or one of the best sets of the night, according to Kevin. And now there was some comedians that had a little problem with it. I know that Chelsea Handler, she said about the joke that Shane Gillis, he was the host, and they made some jokes about Cheryl Underwood's husband committing suicide. And there was some joke about lynching. He made a joke about lynching black people. Chelsea Handler says she thought the jokes were racist and sexist. She took particular issue with the joke about Shane when he said Kevin Hart is so short, you'd have to lynch him from a bonsai tree. And she didn't think any of those jokes were funny. I'm going to stop there and see what you all thought. I know that roasts go back to, when they were the Friars Club, Jack Benny in the 70s, the Dean Martin comedy roast. This was I don't know, culturally offensive to me. But all right, Stan, did you have a chance to see it?
Unfortunately, I did.
Okay.
And I have to admit that, I came across it and it was a late night. So let's just say that, some of those jokes were, I would have to agree with you, Gary, extremely offensive. Doing the broadcast, I started researching I think Brother Spivey mentioned, hey, did Cheryl Underwood's husband really commit suicide? Who is this Tony Hinchcliffe guy? Who is this Shane, Gillis guy? Who are these people and how do they feel comfortable, um, saying these types of things? I have to give Cheryl Underwood a little credit though, because Cheryl Underwood said, hey, if certain words would have come out of a particular comedian's mouth, they would not have made it out of Inglewood alive. So I was, that was some form of, uh, but I have to admit, I think Kevin went a little overboard with trying to outdo the roast of Tom Brady. I think some of the people that were on this particular roast were on the Tom Brady roast, and that made it what it was. Just think Kevin Hart. No offense when I say this, I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but sometimes that Napoleon complex can come across in many different ways, and it can be way more hurtful than anything else. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Hey, CJ, what did you think? Did you have a chance to look at it?
I did. I saw not the whole thing, but just the parts that people were outraged about because I just heard about the outrage from Kevin Hart, so I had to go check it out. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Kevin Hart is one of those kind of, I don't want to say sellout guys, but you've seen the movies that this guy does. I mean, this man will do anything for a check or any type of thing to make a bag. So it doesn't really surprise me, that Kevin Hart would, you know, be a part of something like this. And it just kind of just shows you how out of touch these celebrity, people are. Just kind of seeing the a false equivalence between what happened to George Floyd and Charlie Kirk. I don't even think those two things are that equivalent. I mean, both violent deaths, but one was a racial hate monger, and one was just a dude who got killed by the police. So I don't, even saying, oh, everything's on the table racially. I mean, I still think that's kind of a bullshit ass excuse. So, I mean, they can you can take it from there, but not surprising from someone like Kevin Hart.
Okay. What I also found interesting is that, I mentioned earlier, Kevin was one of the executive producers, but in between the live broadcast and what they edited for Netflix, they removed some jokes about Donald and Melania Trump that were shown on the live broadcast. They took some of those jokes out. So I don't want to hear that, you couldn't. I mean, Kevin was one of the executive producers, and executive producers have the power to do those kinds of things. So it is what it is. Let me see. Carlos, did you happen to see it? You got an opinion?
Yeah, I saw part of it, and I saw enough. I couldn't watch anymore. I think the appropriate title for the roast of Kevin Hart should have been Sinners 2. I think everybody in there was just sinning. I mean, there were vulgar jokes. There was one joke about a fat girl. Oh, that was vulgar. The joke about Cheryl Underwood's husband jumping off a bridge, and the Golden State Warriors logo don't show it to Cheryl Underwood's husband. I'm like, I had to look it up. I mean, like this, he couldn't be talking about something that really happened, and it really happened. I mean, it just went on and on. I mean, the racial insensitivity was terrible. I mean, I just don't know, when you look back at your career later in life, and you look at a roast like this, I'm trying to figure out how can you even feel good about, maybe I need to go back and watch a roast from 20 years ago. I'm assuming they roasted somebody, but they did not, I guess you could say, curse out or use vulgar language and make vulgar jokes, etc., to the extent they did with this Kevin Hart roast. So to me, I was extremely disappointed. It makes me look at a lot of people who participated in this in a different light, and it's just not. It just what to me. It was pretty terrible.
Okay. Let me go to Dr. Clark if you had a chance or any comment, and then to our researcher.
I didn't see it. I've heard so much about it. And from what I've heard, I wasn't interested in seeing it.
Okay. Mr. Spivey, what say you?
Yeah, I got a couple of different views on this. I don't feel it. First of all, I think that this roast was a roast on Black America. I don't think it was a roast on just Kevin Hart. Secondly, I wonder who was the roastee. Was it Kevin Hart or was it Cheryl Underwood? Because if you go back to some of the jokes And you brought up Kevin Hart on the Breakfast Club. He said something that was really astonishing to me. He said he appreciated the humor. I found that hard to believe when someone says that Kevin Hart and his family came to America on the slave ship in a bottle. Things like Cheryl Underwood received a daytime Emmy because nobody could see her at night. What was one of the other ones was Cheryl Underwood was so black that they had to bring Draymond Green to color balance the cameras. I mean, this kind of stuff was not an attack on just Kevin Hart. It was an attack on Black America. And this is what white comedians do. They talk about skin color. They talk about money. They call us monkeys. And one of the other things that really bothered me was, and I think it was Shane Gillis said that Cheryl Underwood was one of the original kings of comedy and that she could play Kevin Hart's daddy in a biopic, basically calling her a man. I mean, I just found it to be despicable. And I'm still trying to do some research because I looked at a segment of Dr. Umar Johnson and his comment on this roast. And he said something that really troubled me. He said Netflix hired 17 white men to come up with the jokes for this Netflix special of Kevin Hart's roast. Also, the other thing that troubled me was that Kevin Hart and Cheryl Underwood approved all of these jokes prior to the airing of
That
the
is correct.
It goes back to the same thing I said earlier, which people will probably disagree. Kevin Hart has got more money than he can spend if he lives 2 more lifetimes. So why would you, as a producer, approve something like this and let people demean you in this way? I just think it was despicable, and I don't think it was just an attack on Kevin Hart, Cheryl Underwood. I take it as an attack on Black America.
Okay. Well, so it wasn't just me. Okay. Wow. So I want to close out, give you all a chance to talk about anything that we may have missed that's on your mind. We'll run the clock. You got 2 minutes to talk about whatever you want. Anybody want to go first, or want me to just pick somebody?
Call it, Gary. Spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel? All right, let's start off. With Carlos.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
The clock starts now. You got 2 minutes. Talk about whatever you want.
All right. Well, let's give a shout out to the New York Knicks, hometown Bronx, New York, where my wife's from. All the relatives in New York City are just happy right now. Knicks are there in the finals for the first time since 1999. And wow, I mean, 2 straight sweeps. They're beating people by double digits, and I don't mean by 10 points. It's more like 30 points. It's pretty incredible, considering they haven't won a title since the early 70s. Wow. And they've only played in, I think, 4 finals. The 2 with Clyde in the early 70s, in 94, where they lost to Houston in Game 7, and then in 99, I forgot who they played in 99. So congratulations to the Knicks. I thought it was very funny that I was told that Spike Lee was quoted as saying the Knicks will win the championship this year. And then he paused and said, I just hope they don't win the clinching game. I just hope the clinching game is not in New York City. So we'll see what happens with the excitement with that. Now, let me go across from Madison Square Garden to the Meadowlands, where the New York Giants and Jets play. Second year, it'll be the second year quarterback, Jackson Dart. It appeared he showed up at a MAGA Trump rally and he introduced Donald Trump. The kid, what is he, 24 years old? He should be worried more about trying to solidify his position in the NFL. He's taking a political stance, right? We talked about athletes taking a political stance. So he's already taken a political stance, and it's the wrong one for most of us here in America, right? Um, I I don't know if he's going to be allowed to step up, right, and give his political views. You know, our black brothers and sisters who are athletes may need to think about stepping up to give theirs. That's my take.
All right. Okay. Woo. Dr. Clark, anything on your mind for 2 minutes?
Yeah, sugar's on my mind.
Come on, let's talk about it.
Uh, all things start as sugar. Sugar causes, I would say, starch converts to sugar. Processed sugar is bad for you. Joint pain, arterial disease, damage to your eyes, kidney damage, metabolic disorders. We always talk about diabetes. We forget that diabetes is not a disease, but it's just a symptom of metabolic dysfunction. So is hypertension in most people. So is heart disease in most people. So is the stroke derivatives in most people. So what I'd like to say is glucose is the substance that the body uses as a fuel. Once you get above a certain level when you ingest it, I call it a glucose threshold. When your body exceeds that threshold is when you start to see the immune system begins to take over and start to attack the body. The sugar itself causes inflammation of the arteries. The immune system begins to attack. The joints will feel it. You get headaches. You get all kinds of problems. If we were to put a continuous glucose monitor on every person, we could control obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, all these things. My purpose in making this my thing that I want to say was that last thing I want to leave is the term I use, glucose threshold. What is that? The fasting glucose that you have in the morning, you eat something during the course of the day, be it protein, carbohydrates, or fat. The only one that's going to raise it beyond the threshold is going to be the carbohydrates. If you had a continuous glucose monitor in your arm, you would see spikes in your blood sugar levels on a meter or on your phone. If everybody starts getting a continuous glucose monitor, we'll be able to modify and prevent a lot of chronic diseases.
All right. Dr. Clark, we're bringing you back for another show on sugar. I can tell you that right now. That was compelling. Oh my goodness. Stan.
Couple minutes real quick, Carlos. Kudos to the Knicks. Unfortunately, they're going to have to deal with the West Coast, and I believe that OKC Thunder will be taking that title once again. It will be a two-peat. So, it's great to get there, but it's also, unfortunate that your boys are not gonna, they're not gonna win the trophy this year. So, OKC Thunder will get it. So, secondly, within that minute, I will have to say that, we started this show off with the athletes. And I'm going to give a shout out to Sam Bam Cunningham. Dr. Spivey, you may remember that name, but I remember, and I have to say, I'm a product of an SEC school. And I know there's a lot of talk out there about, the SEC and what's happening. I played intramural, so I played against a lot of those guys that were getting scholarship. Fortunately, I received an academic scholarship. But I have to give a lot of credit because a lot of the conversation that we had was about the way that USC put a spanking on Alabama. And it was said that, what Sam Bam did in 60 seconds in terms of integration, uh, he did that in 60 seconds much better than Dr. King did in 20 years, or much better than he could have done in a 20-year period. That's my time, brothers. Appreciate y'all. Gary, back to you.
All right. The researcher, you got 2 minutes. Go.
Stan, I'm really glad you said that. I didn't want to rain on Carlos's parade, but I agree with Stan. When Shea Gilgeous Alexander and the boys get their hands on Brunson in New York, it won't be it won't be no sweep. You can count on that. But I'm gonna transition to another thing that had troubled me, and I finally got an answer. I've talked to my wife a number of times about our illustrious president and these different means that he comes up with. The one that troubled me was when he put the monkey face on President Obama and Michelle Obama, and some of the other means that he's come up with. And it troubled me because, he likes to talk about he graduated #1 in his class from Wharton School of Business. But if you listen to him talk for 30 seconds, you will know he didn't graduate #1 from nowhere. And there's a possibility he may not have graduated at all. But I found that he has something which is referred to at the White House as Donnie's Angels. And it's 3 women, Annie Kelly, Margot Martin, and Natalie Harp. They traveled with him when he went to China to visit the president of China. And it is apparent that one of these 3 women, if not all of them, they do these things for social what is that? His platform.
Truth Social.
Yeah, Truth Social. So I just wanted to throw that out. This guy is not intelligent enough to sit up and do this type of stuff. And so now I have a pretty good idea of who's doing it for him. And they are referred to as Donnie's Angels, like Charlie's Angels.
Okay. CJ, take us home.
Sure, I could take it from there. If we're going to start with the negative, we can keep on with Donald Trump. As you see, he's building a UFC cage fighting apparatus outside of the White House.
Can you believe that bullshit?
Let's see, what else have we got going on this week? He's had a $1.8 trillion slush fund for people, in his own words, who break the law on his behalf and have broken the law on his behalf. So there's a slush fund for just Trump criminal allies that it comes out of taxpayer money that we're paying for. So all the January Sixers and all those guys, our money's going to them for their quote unquote political persecution. There's a continuing war going on that Israel will not allow him to get out of. He said, another week where he says we have a ceasefire deal. Then Israel's Minister of Defense says we cannot allow Donald Trump to make a peace deal. Then a day later, Donald Trump says no deal. He adds a bunch of crazy, outlandish things to the Iranian deal. And his deal is essentially a worse version of the Obama deal that we already had, that Barack Obama already had in place with Iran. So he has a worse version that he can't seem to negotiate because Israel wants to continue to bomb Lebanon. Speaking of Israel, they have a stranglehold on our local elections for some reason. If I take you back to the race in Kentucky, very prominent Kentucky primary happened last week. Thomas Massie, very popular Republican in Kentucky, they dumped a record amount for a primary. There's over $35 million or something that AIPAC, the Israel lobby, put in against him. And a guy with no website who is basically referred to as just a warm body by Donald Trump to fill the seat, won that election based on all that outside money that was poured in. And a bunch of Democrats also lost their seats this week. AIPAC bragged about unseating all those. So a foreign government basically has control over our local elections via unlimited amounts of dark money that they can funnel in every race. But on a positive note, like I said, shout out to the Knicks, shout out to New York in general. There's one positive storyline going on politically outside of, just the Knicks being good is Zoran Mamdani is doing a great job up there. He has balanced the budget. Right. He's come through with a lot of his campaign promises. He has his policy to tax the units that landlords don't live in actually generated a ton of money, surprisingly, because a lot of rich people own properties in New York that they don't actually live in. So taxing those properties allows the people that actually live in New York to not be taxed. And that helped with the tax loopholes. He also had a program where he's got $50 World Cup tickets for everybody exclusively for New York. And he was seen at the Knicks game, but not on the floor level with Spike Lee and the celebrities, but in the nosebleed section, hanging out with the fans. So it's good that they've got some positive vibes and an actual politician delivering on his campaign promises to have a progressive agenda and showing that that is not only good politics, but good policy.
All right. See, we had a tight agenda, but we got through it. Tonight's conversation wasn't just about sports or health, masculinity. Masculinity was also about power. Who has it? Who controls it? Who has influence? We talked about the Trump criminal element, the mob family that he's running, the criminal enterprise that he's running from the Oval Office. We're also talking about athletes using their platforms. We talked about that. Men trying to improve their health. We're definitely going to have Dr. Clark back on to talk about that sugar. I'm intrigued about the sugar and how it's connected to almost everything. We got to get ownership of our bodies, our voices. And so I want to thank you all for rocking with us tonight. We talked about real men, real topics, real debate. Hey, good night, everybody. I'm Gary Johnson for the Thought Brothers. Thank you to Dr. Clark and Stan the Man Harrison. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Good night.
Good night, folks.
Good night.